second half of last week on the road up in Northern California meeting with current and potentially new investors. The purpose of the meetings in terms of our current investors was really kind of cover the performance of the fund, talk about what I should anticipate moving into the second half of the year, and really an opportunity for me to get to know them. See, in a lot of cases, I've never met a lot of my investors. Most of it, either it was a phone call or maybe a quick Zoom call. Maybe an investor came into my office quickly and we talked, we spoke and met in our office. But in a lot of cases, especially in today's world where you don't get an opportunity to sit down with individuals, it really was a good opportunity to meet face-to-face with my investor base. And then also for those new investors that were interested, really talk to them about really kind of what the investment was and see if it really kind of fit within their investment objectives. So I wanted to share a couple of things. Number one, I wanted to share kind of the main questions that people had for me. This included current investors and potential investors, and then share some of the stories that I learned when I met with investors. The top three questions that were asked, and I'll tell you, of the top three, what the return of the fund wasn't actually a top three question. Actually, the top three questions was first, how safe is my investment? Now, I always respond to investors when they ask this question by saying, number one, obviously you are secured in first position on real estate in core Southern California markets. Majority of the fund is located here in San Diego, just because this is kind of where we network, where we go out and we talk to real estate investors, mortgage brokers, real estate operators, and whatnot. I have a high confidence level should the economy slow down, or if we have an unpredictable event that we did not foresee, that real estate values in these core markets will hold their value. And that's simply because of a supply and demand imbalance, especially on the housing side here in San Diego. We simply don't have enough housing, and we're never going to have enough housing just because of the laws and restrictions that are in place that make it very difficult to bring new housing to the market. So I'm very confident long term in the values of real estate in the Southern California market. The second question that we get is what to anticipate in the second half of the year. Now, this is a much more difficult question because the market seems to get more and more dynamic. And when I say that, especially coming out of COVID, a significant rise in interest rates starting last year has really made it very difficult to predict what's going to happen literally in the following quarter. So I'm going to take my shot here and kind of see and pull out the crystal ball and predict what I think is going to happen. I don't think the Fed is going to be going out and raising rates significantly. I think you've seen kind of the inflation issue starting to subside. Those inflation numbers are coming down, and I think that the Fed is comfortable with that. Also, and the fact that you've got local and regional banks still dealing with liquidity issues, they don't want to initiate any further instability in some of these smaller banks. So I don't think rates are going to go further or go up much more. I also will say that many people are becoming much more confident in the general real estate market. Now let's cut out office because I think a lot of investors obviously, and I think the market is very concerned about where office is going. But let's just talk about single family residential, multifamily residential, and then your kind of industrial light warehouse type space. There is a lot of money flooding back into the private lending space. And even though rates have gone up in terms of what the Fed rate has gone up, I think the additional liquidity that is coming into the marketplace is going to really drive or put pressure on rates in the private debt space from really going much further. In fact, you might see in the second half of the year rates coming down, the returns investors might expect to return just because of what I'm seeing right now, the amount of liquidity coming to the market and obviously competition coming into the marketplace. And then the third main question when I was on the road was, and I must think that people think that I'm going to kick it here because what's the backup plan if I were to die or become incapacitated? I can tell you right now that I have a staff that has been here a long time, and they are more than capable of managing the company in its current state, winding it down if it's necessary. In fact, if you were to ask them, they probably want me out of the day-to-day operations. I probably just make it make it more difficult for them. So I'm confident in the team that I have, that if something were to happen, that they can continue the operations. So those were the kind of the three main questions that I heard from investors on the road, beyond just kind of what was the return? Do we have any issues in the portfolio? We don't. And some of those other common questions we have about just general performance questions. Now, I wanted to share a couple of stories. And I want to share these stories because when I'm on the road talking to investors, I feel like I get much more connected to understanding who they are than being on a Zoom call or having them come into an office, where meeting them kind of in their town or where they're comfortable with lets them kind of put their guard down. In fact, they probably spend more time, investors who I meet with in their towns, spend more time just kind of talking about their community and whatnot. So I wanted to share these stories because I think I took a lot away from it. First was going to be on the first day of the meetings. I met up with a doctor who had a lot of experience investing in various real estate investments. These were from residential or multifamily syndications to individual trust deeds to mortgage funds to crowdfunding sites. If it's available to invest in, he probably looked into it. And what was interesting about this meeting was he provide some insight into kind of best practices that he sees other operators do, and suggested, hey, maybe you should consider doing this, this, and this. And most of them had to do with just being transparent about the investment. If it's going well, if it's not, what to expect. It led me to believe that one of the things we can focus on is to ensure that all investors are aware that they can log into our investor portal. That's the Talamar Financial Investor Portal, and view in real time all the information about the mortgage fund. Now, you can view how many loans are in the fund. You can view the current performance, if there are any loans in default, loans by loan type, by location, and whatnot. So that's all available to investors. If you have not logged in to view the investor portal, or you don't have a username or password, highly suggest that you do. If you do need a username and password, please reach out to my team. We'd be more than happy to provide you that information. The second story was about an individual who actually had never graduated college. In fact, I don't know if he actually graduated high school, but he was telling me the story about how he had owned a number of businesses. Now, keep in mind that a lot of investors that I work with are self-made, or they were high-level executives at a corporation. So many of these people, many of my investors are retired. They're looking for consistent monthly income. They're looking for the security of real estate, and the mortgage fund kind of meets a lot of those check boxes for them. So in this case, this is a gentleman that was retired, didn't graduate college, had got into the contracting business, was actually a mayor of a wealthy community up in the Bay Area, and we sat down for breakfast, and he told me his whole story of how he kind of got to where he was, and it was really fascinating about him saying that, look, it was hard work, honest of what I do in terms of the contracting business, and he had retired out to this community, and then took me around the corner. We were actually at an airport, took me around to show me his hangar with his plane in it, and then his office that he had put into the hangar as well. So the takeaway there, I got what, people work very hard for their wealth, and they want to feel confident that what they're investing in, most importantly, isn't going. That was the big takeaway there. Obviously, we're focused on investing in short-term first position loans on residential and multifamily and small balance commercial assets. And so, again, it goes back to my confidence in the markets that we're lending in, that should there be any type of economic shock, values in these areas should hold steady. Another story was, this is great because this was a couple that has been investing with me for almost 10 years. So when I first started the company, we were providing individual trust deeds. So I would underwrite a loan, and then I would match that loan up with an individual investor or multiple investors, and then I would service that loan. And this person had invested in over 70 loans with us and was actually an early adopter when we transitioned from trust deeds to the mortgage fund. But they did let me know that of the 3 foreclosures that I've had over my entire career, that they were involved in 2. I tried to chuckle it up, say, hey, unfortunately, that's bad luck. But I think for them, They were happy that, we stayed involved, obviously, in the transaction, did everything we could to make it right. They were able to exit, get their principal back. Again, I think that just goes into the focus of what we're looking to do is safe, secure, first position loans in core markets. And then the last meeting, this was a great meeting because it kind of finished off my 3 days of meetings, was with a gentleman up at his office in Sacramento. I could tell he was very proud of his family in his office. He had a lot of photos of his very big extended family. In fact, he actually had 2 of his children in the meeting with me. And it was more of a meet and greet. Current investor wanted to learn more about the performance of the fund. But then he got serious on me and said, hey, how do I know that this is real? And I would tell you that if you're trying to raise money, try to keep Bernie Madoff out of any conversation. Is probably not a good place to go. In response, I talk about we've got a third-party fund administrator, Veravest, that handles all the day-to-day accounting of the fund. They're the ones that provide the statements to the investors. And then they do the year-end financial wrap-up as well. Also, the fund is audited by a third-party accounting firm. And we have a lot of other things in place to ensure that we're doing this by the books, and including Gerasi Legal, or Gerasi LLP, which is our law firm that set up our mortgage fund and continues to provide legal guidance. But I think at the end of the day, he wanted to press upon me that he had worked very hard for building his wealth. And again, he wanted to feel confident that, number one, we're not going to go out and lose money for him, but that his investment was safe and was secure. So these are 4 stories that I wanted to share. I really appreciated everybody who sat down with me during the meetings. I learned a tremendous amount about you, why you invest, or why you would consider an investment. And I plan to do more of these kind of face-to-face meetings. It's really difficult to get to know your investors if the only way you're communicating with them is over the phone or over video chat. So one thing I do want to note is I'm going to continue to post content like this on my channel. I'd love it if you would subscribe to my channel, watch some of the content that I put on there. I talk about investing in individual trust deeds. I talk about the mortgage fund, talk about kind of what we see in the marketplace. If you like this video, give it a like. And if you want to meet up at any time, feel free to reach out to me. I'll go ahead and put my contact information in the description of this video. So thanks again, and I look forward to meeting all of you.